mean that it's no longer 1937. That
She's
is
not going to be
yeah.
saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be.
They said Disney's latest live-action fairy tale would be a guaranteed smash. Instead, it's become the biggest drama Hollywood has seen in years, and not the good kind. Rumors of backstabbing, ideological clashes, and a devastating box office crash have propelled Snow White into a category of chaos that nobody could have predicted. From theaters pulling showings to merchandise vanishing off shelves overnight, it seems that every new development only exposes how bad things truly got. And at the center of it all stands Rachel Zegler, an actress once heralded as the future of Disney royalty, now facing the fallout of a project that's shockingly close to being canceled altogether. It all started innocently enough. Disney decided to reimagine the 1937 classic Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs for modern audiences. Excitement was high, and the anticipation ran wild as soon as word got out. Fans imagined lavish set designs, enchanting new songs, and a nostalgic celebration of one of Disney's most iconic princesses. For a studio that dominated the family-friendly market for decades, taking on Snow White seemed like a logical step. The formula was straightforward. If the box office had proven one thing, it's that familiar childhood stories almost always bring in guaranteed profits. Yet from the very beginning, faint rumblings suggested that this time, it might not be so simple. Rachel Zegler's public comments poured fuel on the fire. Whenever she spoke about the original Snow White, her remarks struck certain fans as dismissive. She said she wanted a modern reimagining that corrected perceived issues in the classic storyline. That stance was applauded by some viewers who appreciated the forward-thinking approach. Yet a vast portion of traditional Disney enthusiasts felt offended, even betrayed. These fans had a deep emotional attachment to the 1937 film, and they didn't appreciate hearing it labeled as problematic. Forums and social media sites erupted with heated debates. On one side were those rallying behind Zegler's view of updating old material for new audiences. On the other were the loyal purists who felt she disrespected a beloved classic in the process. These behind-the-scenes nightmares trickled out, but the biggest blow hit when the film finally premiered. For a Disney release with a storied legacy, opening numbers were dismally low. Instead of a triumphant, nostalgic weekend with families flocking to theaters, images of half-empty auditoriums began appearing on social media. People posted videos showcasing entire rows of vacant seats. In some cities, you could count the attendees on one hand. The sense of embarrassment was staggering. Even those who hadn't followed the controversy started asking, how did Snow White, of all things, end up playing to near-silent venues? The answer quickly became clear. The swirl of negative press, combined with Rachel Zegler's remarks and the rumored infighting, had overshadowed everything else. The narrative wasn't, is this new take on Snow White any good? It was, how did Disney allow such a meltdown to happen? Media outlets relished every new revelation, from the rumored personal arguments to the questionable creative choices that alienated fans. The movie ceased to be about a fairy tale adventure and instead became a cautionary tale about misguided reboots and public spats. If there was any hope that word of mouth might pick up over time, it was dashed once theaters began dropping the film. Within days of the premiere, major chains decided to pull Snow White from primetime slots, replacing it with movies that drew more reliable crowds. In especially humiliating cases, entire listings of Snow White screenings vanished from certain multiplexes. It was as if the movie's presence was being erased in real time, a near unthinkable scenario for a Disney production. Online speculation soared, with some calling it a soft cancellation. While Disney itself didn't release any formal statement that the film was canceled, the writing was on the wall. Once theaters start removing a movie en masse, that movie is effectively done. The shockwaves extended beyond cinema schedules. In retail spaces, Snow White merchandise, which had been rolled out for tie-in promotions, started quietly disappearing from shelves. Plush dolls, newly designed toys, and commemorative items were either heavily discounted or pulled entirely. Shopkeepers confessed that the items simply weren't moving. Even more tellingly, some rumored that Disney instructed certain retailers to downplay or remove Snow White displays to minimize further brand embarrassment. For a company that usually orchestrates huge merchandising campaigns, think about all the t-shirts, figurines, and lunchboxes that accompany a typical Disney launch. This retraction signaled an outright crisis. Amid this humiliating scenario, Rachel Zegler's emotional state took a steep dive. Initially, she seemed confident about the film's direction. even praising its modern moral message. But as photos of vacant cinemas went viral and reports of dismal ticket sales piled up, insiders claim she felt overwhelmed by the backlash. She received countless comments online accusing her of tarnishing the movie with her outspoken opinions. Critics said she failed to show respect for the classic's origins and turned off the core audience, parents and Disney loyalists, who might have been the film's best shot at success. Zegler reportedly broke down more than once, devastated to see how quickly her star vehicle had veered off course. She'd once believed Snow White would catapult her to Disney icon status. Now that vision was reduced to a swirl of negative headlines and rumors she might be blacklisted from future blockbusters. Across social media, fans who felt burned by the changes to the storyline expressed vindication. Memes about the empty seats circulated widely, painting a picture of Snow White as a hopeless, cringeworthy adaptation. Hashtags calling for viewers to skip the movie gained momentum. Others felt sad about the fiasco. They believed a respectful update to the film could have worked if only the creative team had balanced tradition with innovation more delicately. Now the meltdown overshadowed any positives the movie might have offered. Yet for every person who wrote the adaptation off completely, there were some who kept their eyes on the rumor mill. Speculation brewed that Disney might attempt a quick recast or a complete overhaul. One of the most buzz-worthy rumors: the possibility of Jenna Ortega stepping in as a new lead, either to salvage Snow White or star in a rebranded spin-off. The idea might seem wild, especially given how entrenched Rachel Zegler was in the role, but talk of a replacement soared when behind-the-scenes whispers suggested Disney was desperate to distance itself from a negativity. Jenna Ortega, known for her strong presence and magnetic appeal among younger audiences, had already proven she could carry dark, whimsical stories. Could the company rebuild Snow White around her, or possibly craft a spiritual sequel that discards a fiasco while preserving some semblance of the brand? In a world where reboots and remakes are the norm, where does Snow White go from here? Is it already consigned to the infamous list of Hollywood's most expensive disasters, never to be reclaimed? Or might Disney try to relaunch it with a new star and approach, ignoring the fiasco that scuttled this version? The Jenna Ortega rumor, while unconfirmed, hints at the studio's restlessness. They might not want to waste the brand recognition surrounding the Snow White name, even if the current iteration crumbled. But would fans accept a swift replacement, or has the damage already been done? Some corners of the internet hold out hope. They believe that with the right casting choices, a toned-down approach to fixing the original fairy tale, and more thoughtful handling of behind-the-scenes conflicts, Snow White could be rehabilitated. Others feel that once a live-action adaptation falls flat, particularly with such a famous Disney property, there's no easy redemption. The meltdown reached so many corners of the movie-going public that it's hard to imagine people returning to watch a new version anytime soon without recalling the fiasco. The negative headlines, the empty theaters, the pulled merchandise, and the feuding stars form a potent memory that might linger for years. To be fair, modern audiences have short attention spans and are quick to move on to the next big scandal. But this meltdown was so significant that even casual observers, who might not usually pay attention to Hollywood drama, found themselves gawking at the spectacle of a Disney film tanking so rapidly. Now, while the film is practically off theater schedules, the conversation online turns to possible streaming releases. Will Snow White eventually land on Disney Plus with little fanfare, hoping that enough curious viewers might at least give a click? Or will it vanish for a while, re-emerging only when the dust has settled? There's always a chance it becomes something of a cult curiosity, a lost Disney film that fans watch just to see how it all went so famously wrong. Regardless, it's tough to see it finding a second life as a triumphant streaming success, given the relentless negativity swirling around it. And then there's the wild card, the rumor that Disney might place Jenna Ortega in a reworked version of the fairy tale. Maybe not as Snow White per se, but as a new protagonist in a restructured adaptation, one that quietly sidesteps the controversies that sank the Zegler-led film. Skeptics argue this is too little, too late, and that recasting won't fix a brand already contaminated by public spats. Others see it as a necessary reboot, a potential fresh start that could untangle Snow White from the fiasco and let audiences approach it with renewed optimism. Either way, the meltdown surrounding Snow White stands as a wake-up call for an industry that relies on big names, nostalgia, and brand loyalty. If the star and the studio fail to present a united front, if the messaging antagonizes the core fan base, and if tensions overshadow the actual story, no amount of marketing magic can spin a flop into a fairy tale success. Like a cautionary legend told around Hollywood, this film's downfall will be dissected for years to come. Casting directors, producers, and PR strategists will pore over every detail, trying to avoid replicating such an epic implosion. Where does everyone go from here? Rachel Zegler may need to step back and rebuild her public persona. Gal Gadot might quietly focus on other roles that distance her from this fiasco. Disney, licking its wounds, will likely recalibrate how it approaches future remakes, possibly tightening its grip on the narrative to prevent another fiasco. And the fans? They'll move on to the next big story soon enough, but they won't forget this one quickly. They'll remember the scandalized headlines, the deserted auditoriums, and the frantic removal of merchandise. They'll recall that once upon a time, Snow White, a name synonymous with Disney magic, became a cautionary tale about hubris, clashing visions, and the dangers of rewriting a legend without respecting its essence. Still, a faint glimmer of possibility lingers. Maybe, just maybe, Snow White could be reborn with a stronger sense of purpose and better synergy among the people involved. Perhaps a future version starring someone like Jenna Ortega, if the rumor pans out, could restore faith in the story. That, of course, depends on whether Disney is willing to address the mistakes that led to this train wreck in the first place. But for now, the meltdown speaks louder than any marketing campaign. The film is off the big screen, merchandise is gone, and Rachel Zegler stands at crossroads, facing the hard truth that not every fairy tale gets a happily ever after. Whatever happens next, Hollywood won't forget the downfall of Snow White, and neither will millions of viewers who witness the collapse play out in real time. From the epic feud to the brand humiliation, this saga proves one thing beyond doubt: when you tangle with a beloved classic, you'd better tread carefully. Because if you lose the trust of the fans and find your film playing to empty cinemas, no amount of studio muscle can bring that project back to life. The meltdown has been written into the industry's memory as an example of exactly how not to handle a high-profile adaptation. And so the story ends for now, leaving behind a storm of questions and the possibility that a recast, a reimagining, or a complete overhaul might rise from the ashes. Only time will tell if Snow White can escape the shadow of its own controversy, or if this chapter marks the final page in a tale that strayed too far from its magical roots.